Welcome to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision meets strategy and bold moves create measurable results. I'm Liat, Siegel, interior designer and ROI strategist with 17 years of experience. I help businesses transform properties and ideas into high-performing assets. This show is specifically for real estate investors, hospitality operators, and boutique developers who aren't afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, and demand a return on every decision they make. Each and every week, we talk with innovators and leaders across industries about the strategies and the insights and really all the unconventional thinking that turns potential into profit every single time. If you believe that smart design, decisive leadership, and strategic risk are the keys to real ROI, you're in the exact right place. Let's dive in. Today's awesome guest is Jennie Yip, a renowned concept developer and operator with over 30 years of experience in hospitality, food and beverage, and boutique hotel projects. Jennie has worked alongside industry icons like Schrager, Andre Balazs, and Chef Jean-Georges, shaping the guest experience and operational strategy for celebrated venues such as the Delano and Gramercy Park Hotel. Her expertise bridges the gap between visionary F&B design and operational ROI, making her an invaluable voice for anyone interested in the business of hospitality. Jennie, thank you so much for joining us. What a pleasure. What an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I want to hear everything about how you started in this industry and how you stumbled into becoming such a pivotal point in the revenue generation of these hotel projects.
Happy to discuss it. It's been a long road. It's been a long road of 30 years and learning from the best. Where do we begin?
Yeah, start from the beginning. How did you stumble into it? How did you know that this is what you want to do?
You know, it started in New York. Prior to New York, I lived in Paris for a while before I got into hospitality. And I just love the way bistros became the living rooms of everyone's sort of DNA living in Paris. Hotels were glamorous, hotel coffee shops, restaurants were glamorous. I used to hang out at the Maurice Hotel and at Angelina's coffee shop there and Cafe Flore. And during that time when I lived in Paris, you know, Prince had a nightclub. I'm like, what a fabulous time in life. Like, does hospitality always look like this? And fast forward, I came, back to New York City and through friends got introduced to the Royalton Hotel where a particular friend was working as a server. And she's like, if you want to get into hospitality, I'm working at this restaurant. I think you should come along and interview. And I interviewed with Brian McNally and Jonathan Moore at that time in the early 90s. And they were running 44 restaurant at the Royalton Hotel, which is an Schrager hotel at the time. And they just created magic all the time, every meal, every angle. And I'm like, this kind of feels like Paris in a nutshell in Midtown Manhattan. And there's this little magic that's happening here in this jewel of New York City. How is it that, HBO and Condé Nast and Anna Wintour just all end up in this place every day for lunch? And so it just like the whole world of it just fascinated me. And learning from, Brian McNally, an East Ender from London with his brother Keith McNally, who, really started the restaurant scene in New York in a scene. Odeon, Cafe Luxembourg, Lucky Strike. So all these places became sort of New Yorkers' backyard. And they have this network and this formula for making people feel great in these spaces. Whether it's the lighting, it's the seating, it's the cozy banquettes from Paris that they sort of mimicked. It's the cozy lighting that came from like French bistros, the signage, the late hours. Kind of reminds me of Florent as well during that time in early New York. Florent coffee shop and all of McNally Boys restaurants became sort of staples of New York. And then Jonathan Moore, who's another counterpart during the 44 days, who actually comes from, hospitality school, who came and became the GM. I learned a lot from him on really systems and the art of service. So you have Brian McNally, who's networking constantly and knows how to take care of people in a dining room during all meals. And then there's Jonathan Moore, who comes from hospitality school, and he's got systems, he's got ways, he's got an art of taking care of people on a finer dining end. So it's just gelling the two together. And I'm like, this is amazing. I want to stay in this and be a part of it. And then third component is being in the doors of Schrager Hotel with Philippe Starck design. It's like, what world does this happen? And I just learned so much. That's really, sort of the taste of it in the beginning, in the early days of 90s when I started.
It does sound like magic. I mean, for somebody who lives in design, and when I am picking out fabrics and materials and putting them together, sometimes I stop and I'm like, wow, this is really my job. Like I live, and then being able to see that service component too. I think that that's the intersection where you live is, being able to be of service, and then also experiencing the fine dining and hospitality. The high level of hospitality is so magical. Where do you think, you mentioned formula, what do you think is that magic formula? What are the pillars? Because it's not, I don't think it's happenstance. It's not something that just comes together randomly. I think it's curated. So what are those components to make, that hospitality experience, that magic formula that can be repeated again and again?
Since opening thereafter at the Royalton, I gone on and opened the Delano Hotel for Ian Schrager, Brian, Jonathan. We all went down to open it. And that particular project really taught me a lot on sort of the art of hospitality and all the magic components that go into creating a project that can't be duplicated. What I learned from that, and I still apply, everything that I learned from the Delano Hotel opening is still what I apply today, because each person on that project cared so much about what they did on this project and what they do for a living. Started with Ian Schrager, who found this building, found the bones of this building, purchased this building, and said, I'm going to make magic out of here after spending time, much time in Florida. And then deciding on, who was going to design this, which he chose Philippe Starck. And Philippe Starck, even at that time, he was very heavily involved with Alessi and designing products for Alessi. He had opened Paramount Hotel, Royalton Hotel. And I love being in the doors of sort of art and design and whimsy at the same time. And so when I met Philippe Starck and his team, I said, this is just magic. Why do people dine? Why do people go to hotels? What is the magic that people want to feel every time? First, as even in travel in general and even getting on airplanes, like there is an art and luxury of going out and going to travel, and people sort of have forgotten that. And so Philippe, Ian, even Brian McNally, their whole sort of philosophy is, you bring people out to create something that they can't have themselves. And it's not interiors. They won't have these interiors inside their home. So you're going to create something else outside for people as a destination that's magical. And so where does the magic come from? Comes from design. And I always believe like interior design has it's sort of the compass, if I can use that word, in how people really feel. Because design, for us to select a restaurant, for us to select a hotel, is visual at the end of the day. Yes, then you start looking at service. So people look at that and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't experienced something like that before. That's what people are saying. Even in selecting restaurants, oh yeah, it's a Middle Eastern or Italian restaurant and it's got this angle, it's got this design. Why not go out and experience something completely different? All of these men taught me, like, if you're going to create something, create magic, because it only happens once. People are coming out to dine, people are coming out to stay, and that's important in hospitality. On that particular project of the Delano, I met, Arnold Chan, who's a lighting magnet in the industry, between, lighting Calvin Klein stores to homes for the Murdoch and whatnot. And he works with Philippe Starck and another interior designer, Christian Liagra, and a few others. And I never knew lighting really creates magic. I mean, you can design a place, but if it's not lit correctly, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. Something's wrong, something's off. And I learned this from Arnold Chan. And still today, he teaches me when we go and sit in a restaurant, he'll teach me why some lighting works and why some lighting doesn't, right? So he was another key component who has introduced me to quite a few designers. And that's how I sort of pivoted my career into working with quite a few different interior designers. For me, I really love working with designers who obviously have a vision, have a story, and they want to sort of bring out what ownership wants, but in a very thoughtful, methodical way that feels great for the customer, front of the house, back of the house, feels great for ownership, front of the house, back of the house, the efficiencies of how the room moves. And so when I work with interior designers, they listen to the operators, such as myself, and saying, okay, we need size stations in certain areas. We need this at certain height. They can design a lot of furniture, but we want the height of this coffee table to be so much and so high. And working with Christian Liagra on 3 projects taught me every detail of everything we choose for a restaurant or a hotel matters. So I had very, very early education with Christian Christian, working on 3 projects with him. The Mercer Hotel, Wave, this department store in Bangkok, creating 5 restaurants, and a residential tower. And I was helping with the kitchens and pantries of the resident. And he really taught me that OS&E, tabletop, linen, you are creating a lifestyle when you choose these products for his interiors. So he and a lot of the interior designers that I work for really care about the furniture as well as the tabletop, as well as the lighting. They believe that you are living my design, my lifestyle. This is the silverware that I would choose. This is the linen that I would pick. This is the custom plate that needs to be done. And so I learned a lot of that from Christian. He took me to a lot of his restaurants in Paris and a hotel in Paris, Hotel Montalembert, which he designed in his early days, I believe in the early 80s. And he taught me that every touch point matters, how it feels, the weight of things. And so he never compromised. And he's like, don't compromise, because this is the interiors of how I see it, or next interior design that you're going to see it. It all needs to feel right, look right, taste right. And there's a component to that. There's a system that we all need to sort of adhere to make one project magic. And then on the other side, obviously the food, the chef that you choose, and the operations and the service style. So teaching that. So once I sort of set the stage, and most of the time on projects on the very, very early side with the interior designer, I then get to choose all of the tabletop, all the tableware, create the brand story for ownership, and then move on into operations. And then that's where I can teach the GM, director of food and beverage, even the chef, what the product is and what we want to convey to the customers. And so being sort of like the next brand ambassadors to what Christian wanted and what ownership wants, and then translating that to the customers. And that's why some of the places that I created are still around today.
Wow. What I'm hearing you say is that the magic formula for creating these unforgettable experiences really starts with collaboration at the front end, and design, as like you said. I love that so much, that it's the compass, that it's the anchor that kind of guides everything else strategically, when it's strategically done right. And then everything else kind of flows from there, whether it's your work or, translating the owner's desires into real life experiences.
Yes. The food component is very important at the end. Once a stage is set with the interior designer, the food and the menu and the offering is really important, because this is what makes people come back. Interior design doesn't really make people come back, but it's the magic then thereafter that you need to really have. Service, managers that understand, chefs that are personable, and a seasonal menu, a menu that can change often enough and be flexible with the times. But, keeping a close eye at that point on operations, and to make sure that all the efficiencies are there. If something's not working, we can pivot quickly. But that's how we have to just keep an eye on the target constantly.
Yeah, I like to say that interior design is the thing that attracts, that draws people in, and the service is what gets them to stay and want to come back. I mean, I do believe that a wow experience, and I know we've spoken about this at length before regarding having a strong identity. Like, I think that's what gets people to want to come back again and again, is having that unique experience that they can't have at home, that they wouldn't create for themselves. I'd love to understand from you, in all the different concepts that you've worked in, how important and how do you create this unique identity, whether it be the interiors or the food or the overall experience, so that it's iconic?
I think setting the formula in the beginning, interior design branding needs to be quite strong. I think branding much more today than it was back in the day when I started in this industry 30 years ago. Today, there's, such as a QSR, which you don't really need a whole lot of interiors, but it's the branding and it's the community and it's the marketing messaging that constantly needs to be sort of fed, designed, and curated. I see this in coffee shops as a very, very small example, but it's very similar to restaurants as well, where coffee is the product, but at the same time, you create a lifestyle of the entire experience for that customer. And I think Blank Street is a prime example of something that works and has resonated with millennials, but sort of like the younger generation, where what is it that made them special, right? It's the price point, it's the ad campaign, it's the lifestyle, videos of how you can live this lifestyle with Blank Street. It's very, very cool. And I haven't, we didn't do any of that. This is a lot of these projects I had worked on, not pre-internet, but maybe pre-cell phones, a few of them. And then thereafter, we didn't have Instagram or Facebook opening the Delano Hotel. So you create buzz, was through word of mouth. And a lot of that had happened in the past. And today, that word of mouth sort of is your Instagram and social media. Yeah. So I really believe today to really stand out is your branding. Definitely your interiors matter, but back then it mattered a lot more. If we can create that same magic that we did, which I find today ownership kind of depends on who I work with, that ownership really cares about interior design and some don't care down to the detail as much as you and I would like. But the magic still is in the branding. And some projects and clients that I work with, they like interior, but they don't love interior. And so I believe you really have to dig deep and get down to the details of every angle on the project and every touch point.
Touch points are so important. I love the example that you said about the weight of the cutlery and how every detail matters and that it ends up being timeless. The customer doesn't even necessarily notice, but I always equate it to like a rock in your shoe. You never realize that there's no rock in your shoe until there's a rock in your shoe and it feels uncomfortable. Good design isn't seen. It's just, it uplifts. And it's so important to create the entire branded experience. I call it online to offline, right? That time that a customer first sees the brand online and then all the way to the time that they experience it in the space. And then again, consistency of service every time they come back. And that continuity, that brand experience, that story, that lifestyle is vital for the success of that concept so that the competition doesn't beat them, right? Like if you're not staying ahead and understanding what do my customers want, what and listening to what they want and creating that magic and continually updating it for that magic formula, then a hotel will ultimately fall behind.
We're actually in the middle of finishing up a bar in Los Angeles. It's nightclub / lounge, and the interior design is spectacular. Very colorful, very gold, very red, orange, and selecting all the glassware, you know, the stemware, creating the cocktails and that guest experience, how food is going to be delivered, placed on the bar, placed at a table. We really study every detail from the size of the tabletops to the size of the glassware, stemware. We mock up different foods on the table and see how that place setting looks, customizing linen with the logo, menus. There's a lot of sort of science that goes into how you still want to make that customer feel. So I always start all my projects with a guest journey experience. And in this particular bar, all these touch points of like how the weight of the glass feels, what the sip will, you know, once that glass hits your mouth and what that feels like. So like all these little things sort of matter. And then for the back of the house side, how they're going to take care of all of these things that we've selected, you know, your tables and your plates and your silverware, your glassware. I wouldn't say that the glassware is expensive in that way or the plates are very expensive. It's just how it's all curated because there's high end, there's low end, there's little touch points. There's some little touch points of how certain objects make you smile, even sitting at the bar. So this all makes and adds to the experience. And it takes months to really plan, design, source, to curate and make this feel right. And I love working with clients who have the same feeling and I want to feel this for the client.
They're so integrated in the service aspect and the wanting to feel like being of service to others that nothing else matters to them. It's just like, I want to create that experience. And I'd love to hear from you just how important, I know how important what you do is, the F&B strategy. I would love to, for our audience to understand why it's integral for them to bring in somebody like yourself from the very, very beginning and to have all the pieces up front for collaboration so that you get the best product at the end of the day.
I think ownership and my clients, they have a very, very strong vision. Most of my clients are quite well traveled. They come with a very, very strong vision already of what they've seen around the world. And they come to me and say, hey, I want to create this destination. I want to create this bar. I want to create this hotel. They always have an interior designer in mind. They have a branding person in mind. And I get everyone, you know, in a roundtable discussion, all the decision makers at the roundtable and start discussing what the concept is going to look like. Because if you don't hear from the owners, and I'm very, very lucky to only sort of work with ownership and hearing it sort of from the horse's mouth, but not everyone gets to do that. And so when you hear it from the actual owner, it helps sort of, you know, paint that entire picture of what it's going to look like. But everyone should be at the round table to hear it, to see it, to feel it, and to feel the energy of that client and how passionate he is about wanting this particular product to be out in the world for everyone to experience. So on a project last year, creating a private club for a client in downtown Wall Street, he had a very, very strong vision of creating sort of this Viennese, Venice bar that can go from coffee to cocktails and covering all the day parts with an all-day menu. And he's passionate, and he found this, he travels a lot in Europe. He goes to Italy all the time. And just from that particular travel, we host a roundtable and we talk about the experience that he had, why he feels like this, how we could feel and bring this to New York City. Interior designers are on the call, sales and marketing are on the call, head of construction is on the call, project managers and the branding person and the salespeople are on the call because this is part of a condominium. And once you hear this and we all can understand and visualize this customer in the voice of ownership, we all can feel what they want, what the ownership wants in this, so that sales and marketing knows how to sell this product to people. I know how to design the food and beverage side from the front of the house to the back of the house. In my world, I create the concepts with ownership. I decide what kind of cuisine and menu that we want to offer for the guests. We think about that guest experience journey from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, whether it's for a hotel or it's for a private club or a restaurant. It's really opening to closing of what we want that to look like. And then designing the menus that could sort of service all the needs and wants of that customer that's going through these day parts. And then we design the kitchens for all of this. So that's where construction wants to hear, okay, where's the kitchen going to be laid out? Where's the bar going to be? Interior designers can then start plotting that and laying that out with the architect to understand, okay, this is best place here for efficiency, close to the elevator, thinking about the garbage and the storage and the side stations and where the POS are going to be located. Then the interior designer can run with it because they have this sort of
the constraints, what can't be moved, specifically whereabout things need to be. So you have a container with which to place things.
And it's so important that everyone's there at the table discussing this. And so, I started these workshops quite a few years ago where we sit for 3 hours, whoever is necessary, to sit at that round table via Zoom or in person. And sometimes it's just ownership and because once the ownership can get clear on what he wants, then I can convey it to interior designer. I can convey it to project managers, really the construction side. I sort of act as the F&B operator. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but because of my experience of owning my own restaurants in the past and managing hotels on the F&B side and being director of F&B, I understand and know what operations should feel like.
So you become like kind of the operational owner's rep. Because you understand the importance of all the different players on the team, I think your role is so vital. Oftentimes in a project, it's not understood that everybody should come in at the beginning in order to have the most successful project. And you understanding that and seeing how vital each role is, I think really helps to translate the owner's vision and actually make it a reality rather than kind of like a loose idea of what they originally desired.
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes. I often come in really in the middle before they purchase the kitchen. And on this last project in New York, they were just about to purchase the kitchen. They're like, no, we need someone else to look at this because it doesn't feel right. And when I came in, I had to actually move the bar to another location, which then is a very costly expense. Very, very late in the game to move this, to move plumbing, to move everything, because they weren't thinking about sort of all the day parts. And if they were going to lock this bar, it would be open to the public constantly. People would pass through this as a pass through. So unless they were going to have security or they're going to lock the bars. So we had to sit and think about what all the day parts are going to be for the guests to see the bar constantly or put it in hiding. I think about the cleaners. I think about the people coming up to collect garbage. I think about all the locked areas for theft. I think about, sort of risk management for them, because this is important or else you're going to have things start walking in the middle of the night, right? With no security. So they're like, okay, we didn't think about this. So I think it's better we move the bars and we can lock both doors. And, there's a lot of things that you have to live it and breathe it. And I think for me, coming from hotel restaurants, and that's where I started, I always believe and I say, if you can open, 7 food and beverage outlets for a hotel, you can do anything. One freestanding restaurant is very easy compared to a hotel with 7 to 10 food and beverage outlets, from room service, designed for 3-meal restaurants, rooftop bar, nightclub, speakeasy lounge in the back. I mean, there's a lot of components. I think I just thrive in the challenge of creating creating something that's got to be big, but
Yes.
yet, detailed and minute at the same time, which is really fun.
I love that. I love how your brain works on all those different things and can spin all these plates at the same time and keep them spinning. That's incredible. I often wonder, and I've asked this to other F&B folks as well, in terms of sight lines, like I know that beverage has a higher profit margin than food typically, right? And so that can really help increase revenue. Would having the bar at sightline when you come by the hostess station be helpful so that you're seeing that initially because you're seeing all these beautiful drinks coming up or passing by, or you're seeing food sizzling on a skillet? Like these things, these visual cues, in my view, that helps increase revenue because people see it all. I'll take two of those. Those are really cool. How do you decide placement in connection with revenue stream? Like, is that a big deal to have the bar at, when you first walk in so that it can increase the revenue ultimately?
I think it also depends on what ownership wants. I mean, everyone wants to make money at the end of the day, but they also want a certain aesthetic and a certain design. When you said that, what popped up in my head was Hillstone, the restaurant chain Hillstone. And they're kind of, across America, and they do a phenomenal job of exactly what you said. They're very, very strategic in how they design their restaurants, where you come in, you can see the bar, you can see the kitchen, you can see the dining room. It definitely adds energy and it definitely adds excitement to the place. Sometimes in hotels, having the bar, I mean, like when you're traveling, and I feel this for most hotels, when you're traveling, your gathering place is in the lobby, which could be a little lonely, or at the bar. And if the bar is within the sight line of the space, right when you come in, as an option to have a place where, not like you can call home, but a place that you can sit and you can chat with somebody, is quite important. The lobby today is the energy and the sort of workplace for a lot of people. And so lobbies have now turned into sort of lounges, coffee lounges, cocktail lounges. So that I've seen that a lot in hotel projects because we are placing more bars than normal and even smaller bars. We've designed rolling bars in certain areas where there's a lot of seating, but there's not a bar, just for efficiency and just for service. So I do believe that, the energy of having someone sort of take care of this one section, which in the old days, it was a server signed this section, but now it could be, a rolling bar and there's a bartender that can actually bartend and serve you a drink in a small confined area. But I do feel a lot of lounges, a lot of lobbies have taken over and there's a lot more seating just because of this sort of work at home, remote, getting Wi-Fi wherever you can.
Yeah.
Ace Hotel actually started this. Do you recall the Ace Hotel in New York City where you walk in, it feels like a library in their lobby. And
Wow.
when I first, this is probably going back quite a few years back, you walk in and it feels like a library. And I didn't know that it was really the lobby of the hotel. And you come in, but there's that revenue stream of you are open to the public. It helps the hotel, it helps business, and everyone's using it as a meeting space, as a workspace, meeting a hotel guest, or just if you live in the neighborhood, that becomes your local coffee shop or happy hour. So it definitely helps in the ROI for sure.
Yeah, adding additional revenue streams is key.
Yes. And you can do that all day. Ace Hotel in their lobby, it's an all-day affair.
Especially like if you're bringing in the beverages that has that higher revenue stream, then it just doubles and triples the potential that's possible. We have a Prime 18, which is, I'm sure it's going to grow, but it's this checkpoint system that kind of goes through and audits a restaurant or hotel or any kind of space to see, the sight lines, hostess station, like all the different checkpoints of touch points in the customer's journey and the brand identity to make sure that everything is on par and to see what needs to be optimized, what needs to be improved. And it's really interesting to hear your perspective of the different ways through food and beverage and, experiential design that we can add those revenue streams to make the concept the most profitable possible.
Yeah, and I think today, this is 2026 and everyone talks about the labor issue and the labor problem, but there are efficiencies and ways of training now for that staff member to be be sort of multitask in certain areas, especially on the bartending serving side, especially in bars. On a recent project, I said, why wouldn't we train all servers or hire all servers that could be bartenders, that are bartenders? So you don't really have that problem of one person does this, one person does that. And if we can create sort of, especially in a private club, and that was in the discussion of that, we can hire all bartenders that become bartenders, servers, bar back, that these particular people can forecast what can happen. They can plan ahead. They can batch cocktails, but collectively. It's not one person does this, one person does that, because the future of hospitality, you really have to teach people more sort of jobs in a way and more responsibilities. But if there is a way, which there is, and it takes a lot of training, it takes a lot of curating of finding this particular staff group, that you can cross train these people to be sort of one job that everyone can do. The care is going to be much greater. The benefits for ownership to keep staff is going to be much better. The benefits of creating a community where the staff will take care of each other because they play the same role. It's not like, oh, we only hire, 2 bartenders and, 17 servers. And if a bartender's out, then who do we call? So there's got to be future moving forward. There's got to be a way where you can compensate your staff. Sometimes it's a little bit higher on the ownership side to compensate the staff, to learn more, to care more, to be a part of your staff, that it should be soundproof, that you don't have to worry. Like, I don't believe that managers can fix all problems for all staff and servers all the time. There's got to be a way where you build this system, you build this family of care and trust and cross training, where your job is not better than my job and my job's not better than your job because of the labor pool. And I do know that there's a lot of servers and staff who want to be bartenders, or they want to have a better paying job. If the ownership would care to invest and educate and give the tools and allow managers to train the staff, or apply systems and training this staff to sort of cross train and care about your entire business, it would be a lot better for the future.
Agreed. And they would feel better about what they're doing and feel more invested. Like you spoke about at the beginning, the passion that each one comes to the table with, that also includes staff, right? And my husband worked in restaurants for 10 years, and he constantly saw that there was this battle between, back of house and front of house, and one thinking that they're doing more than the other. And if they can be trained and see the perspective from both sides, that they're both working hard and it's challenging on both sides, or just in different roles, and have that perspective shift, I think that is a very creative way to deal with the labor shortage, to deal with challenges, so that if you get stuck, if somebody's out sick, that at least they are trained to talk about ROI, right? That has huge benefit, that they're able to then take over another position that maybe they couldn't have otherwise because they can't cover. That to me sounds like very much like the systems backbone that we've spoken a lot about, and I would love to hear more from you in terms of creating those systems for restaurants, about like startup costs and budgeting and, creating those operational efficiencies. Can you talk to us about like how the container with which you set that up in order to make sure that it's running efficiently?
So on every project, I really spend months with ownership and deciding, okay, what the concept's going to be. That could take a few months, maybe sometimes 2-3 months, depending on how big the project and how many outlets we have. And then I figure out what the startup cost will be for the entire project, for every outlet, not on the construction side, but because there is another construction team and architects who know that price better, but what it's going to cost me on my side to set up and select and source everything for the F&B side, and including the kitchen design. And that's part of my scope. And then from that intense checklist of trying to figure out what all the startup costs will be, from the tech side to the tabletop, designing the kitchens, supplying the kitchens, uniforms, and also pre-opening staff for 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month is part of that startup cost as well. And then from that budget, we then begin the project on developing, because we have approval and funding for curating and selecting and setting up the food and beverage outlet. Then, especially on the tech side, which is very important, I look into the best sort of softwares for revenue management, obviously for reservations, POS, staffing. Today, there are a lot of tools out there that can help with staffing, that can help with, like I said, revenue management. And in selecting these softwares that management and executive chef can use is really, really important, because we all need to be on the same page. From ownership, what they want to see, counting that they can see and track this constantly, to the end user, which is the chef and the managers and maybe sometimes the staff, that they need to use all of these tools to help the business. It's always to help the business to be more efficient. And I've always opened up to all of my staff members that I want to hear all of their point of views on using the software, not using it, why, the pros and cons of it, because I pivot very quickly depending on the end user, on why they're using it, why they're not using it. And then we can find out their efficiencies, because we do want to track all of that. And it's important for ownership to understand where the money's going, where the loss is. My partner in the culinary side, Mitch Prensky, who works with me at Kojo, he's very good at the kitchen side and recipeing every single dish and the menu costing and then tracking inventory. He sets up these beautiful kitchens and sets up these beautiful walk-ins, and there's systems in place and they know exactly what's coming in with the invoices, what's going out, what's being served at night. And so all of this needs to make sense on a daily basis. And so it's important that we hire people who understand that and that care and that know that, it's the benefit of all of us to know where we are, for you to get a paycheck, for us to make some money, for the business to thrive and survive. And so getting everyone at that round table on the operational level is the second round table that I host, because teaching everyone, you don't just give people systems and say, okay, well, use this because it can track better. Let's sit together and program it together and know why, and then know what the output is and what is the input that it needs. And then once we know this, ownership sits with us on the operations side and say, okay, this is how it looks. We sort of all teach each other, especially in the beginning. And then you constantly do this on a monthly basis to make sure that everyone is still keeping track. And so we got to keep, restaurant business is a little bit more difficult these days, but if you keep on tracking and keep on working, keep looking at it, it does help move the train along. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't improve what you don't track, right? And if you don't have buy-in from, ownership or from the staff and can't speak to them about, are they liking it? Are they using it? If they're not using it, then there's no point, right? So you have to get buy-in from all levels. I love that you do that. And I love that you have that continuous feedback loop every month to sit down with them and find out. We do that on our side with the design end of things in terms of ROI, efficiency. We create that 90-day plan even after everything's installed and review, do like quarterly check-ins on ROI, like what is working, what's not working, is there any tweaks or improvement, listen to the staff. So I love that you're doing that and you're systemizing that, the costing and the technology side of things so that everything runs as smooth as possible.
Yeah, very important, as we're all non-tech, but yet extremely tech overwhelmed.
I'm obsessed with technology. Like, I use so many different softwares, and I love, like, in our own business, in our back end, we use a lot of different technologies for budgeting and design aspect and just like remote presentations so that we really can, present or provide documents anywhere in the world. I love that is where we're at right now, that technology has brought us to the point where we can collaborate, and we can be at different parts of the world. Both of us are from Toronto, ended up both in New York, but yet we are still able to connect and collaborate. So I would love for you to leave our audience with 3 tips for owners or developers who are looking to start a new concept or revitalize something that's maybe underperforming. What would be your 3 top tips for them?
I would definitely start with roundtable discussions because understanding your vision, is so important. That needs to be conveyed to everyone and to the world. So if you're not clear on your own concept to begin with, everything will be vague along the way. So definitely get clear and concept clarity on what you're doing. Another tip and advice is really understand your startup costs. Really know what your costs are going to be before spending a dime on purchasing a kitchen or designing a menu. Like, really get clear on what every startup costs, from permitting, timeline, kitchens, operational, software technology. I think it's really important to understand startup costs before you begin any project. There's concept, then there's startup costs. And my third tip is really see what competitors are doing out there. I do find that ownership nowadays, especially in development, do want what people have out there, but they don't understand how to achieve it and how much money that it took to get there. See what your competition is doing on every level, from programming to offering to the guest experience to the amount of staff that it requires to get into it. One thing that's daunting for a lot of some developers that have never been in hospitality is the staff and manpower it takes in a restaurant to run a restaurant. If you want to run a restaurant that's just a coffee shop during the day with, 1 day part, okay, it's a lot cheaper. But you add 2 day parts and the 3 day parts, they're quite shocked at the labor, what it costs to run a place. So definitely do your homework on what it is, because at the end of the day, it's the entire guest experience that the ownership wants and the best product for the best guest experience. So be clear on that, understand your startup costs. And number 3, just understand where you want to be, your end goal at the end of the day and how you want to stand out in the marketplace.
I love it. You have to follow breadcrumbs of success. And by understanding and studying your competition, that is the only way to start a project. So you know exactly what's involved, what it's going to take. I love that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jennie, for all your insights. This was such a jam-packed conversation full of design and food and hotel and everything that I love. If our audience wants to find you, how can they do so?
Look me up under Jennie Yip in LinkedIn and send me a message if you've heard this podcast as well. Send me a message. You can always find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll put your information in the show notes. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.